What happens when Hollywood's biggest action star meets late-night television's most relentless host? The answer involves a heated confrontation that left an entire studio audience stunned and one of entertainment's most powerful figures scrambling to control the narrative. This is the story of how Arnold Schwarzenegger walked off Jimmy Kimmel's show after what started as a routine promotional interview turned into something nobody saw coming. If you want to hear how this incredible situation unfolded, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts on celebrity interviews gone wrong, because what you're about to hear will change how you view late-night television forever. The stage was set for what should have been another typical Hollywood promotional interview. Arnold Schwarzenegger had arrived at the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio to discuss his latest fitness venture, a new line of sustainable workout equipment that he'd been passionate about developing. The Austrian oak looked relaxed as he settled into the guest chair, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that emphasized his still impressive physique, even in his 70s. Jimmy Kimmel emerged from behind his desk with his trademark grin, but those who knew him well might have noticed something different in his eyes that night. The host had been dealing with declining ratings for months, and network executives had been breathing down his neck about creating more viral moments. The pressure was getting to him, and tonight he decided to take a different approach with his guests. "Arnold, great to have you back on the show," Kimmel said, settling behind his desk. "You know, I was looking at some old footage of you from your bodybuilding days, and I have to ask, were you really natural back then, or were there some, shall we say, enhancements involved?" The question hit the studio like a thunderbolt. Arnold's smile faltered for just a moment before he composed himself. "Jimmy, I think we both know why I'm here tonight. Let's talk about the exciting new products I'm launching and how they can help people achieve their fitness goals." But Kimmel wasn't backing down. He leaned forward with that predatory grin that his fans mistook for playful humor. "Come on, Arnold. Everyone's curious about this stuff. I mean, you were competing in an era when, let's be honest, a lot of guys were experimenting. The audience wants to know, were you completely clean?" The studio audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the lighthearted banter they'd come to expect from these interviews. Arnold's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained controlled. "Jimmy, I've been open about my past in my books and interviews. I'm here to talk about helping people live healthier lives today. That's what matters." "But see, that's the thing," Kimmel pressed on, his voice taking on an edge that made his staff exchange worried glances. "You say you've been open, but have you really? I mean, you went from bodybuilding to movies to politics, and now you're selling fitness equipment. Isn't this all just one big brand exercise? Aren't you just selling people a fantasy?" The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Arnold's eyes narrowed, and for the first time in decades of public appearances, viewers could see the former Mr. Olympia's legendary composure beginning to crack. "Jimmy, I came here as your guest to share something positive with your audience. If you want to make this personal, we can do that, but I don't think that's what your viewers tuned in to see." Kimmel's laugh was sharp and calculated. "Oh, but I think they did, Arnold. I think people are tired of the polished Hollywood BS. They want real talk, so let's have some real talk. You're 70-something years old selling workout equipment to people who will never look like you did. Isn't that kind of dishonest?" The attack was so brazen, so completely inappropriate, that even Kimmel's own band members looked shocked. Arnold stood up slowly from his chair, his imposing frame casting a shadow across the host's desk. When he spoke, his voice was low and dangerous, carrying the authority of a man who had conquered multiple worlds. "You know what's dishonest, Jimmy? Inviting someone onto your show under the pretense of a friendly interview and then attacking them for cheap ratings. You want real talk? Here's some real talk. I've accomplished more in my life than most people dream of. I've inspired millions of people to better themselves. I've entertained audiences around the world, and I've served the people of California as their governor. What have you done besides sit behind this desk and tear down people who are actually trying to make a difference? The studio fell dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to freeze as everyone processed what was happening. This wasn't scripted banter or playful roasting. This was a genuine confrontation between two powerful men, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Kimmel's face flushed red, but he pressed forward like a man possessed. "Oh, so now we're comparing accomplishments? That's rich coming from someone who probably couldn't get elected dog catcher today. Face it, Arnold, your best days are behind you. You're just another aging action star trying to stay relevant by hawking products to desperate people." The insult was so vicious, so completely uncalled for, that several audience members actually gasped audibly. Arnold's hands clenched into fists at his sides, and for a moment everyone in that studio wondered if they were about to witness something that would make entertainment history for all the wrong reasons. But Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't become a global icon by losing his cool in moments of pressure. Instead of exploding, he did something far more devastating. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile or even an amused smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized his opponent had made a fatal mistake. "You know what, Jimmy?" Arnold said, his Austrian accent becoming more pronounced as it always did when he was truly angry. "I think your audience deserves to know who they're really watching every night. They think they're seeing a comedian, but what they're actually seeing is a bitter, insecure man who builds his career on tearing down people who are better than him." Kimmel's face went from red to white in seconds. He'd made his living roasting celebrities, but he'd never had one fight back with such surgical precision. "Now wait a minute, Arnold. I think you're taking this a little too seriously. This is just how these interviews go. It's all in good fun." "Good fun?" Arnold's voice rose slightly and the microphone picked up every word with crystal clarity. "You call attacking my integrity and my accomplishments good fun? You call questioning my honesty and my motives good fun? Let me tell you what good fun is, Jimmy. Good fun is inspiring people to be their best selves. Good fun is creating entertainment that lifts people up instead of tearing them down. Good fun is not using your platform to ambush guests who trusted you enough to come on your show." The host was visibly sweating now, realizing that he'd pushed too far, and that this was spiraling completely out of his control. His producers were frantically signaling from the wings, but there was no graceful way to cut to commercial without making the situation even worse. "Look, Arnold, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here," Kimmel said, his voice now lacking the cocky confidence it had carried just minutes before. "Why don't we start over and talk about your new fitness line like we planned?" But Arnold wasn't having any of it. "Start over? You think you can just attack someone's character and life's work and then wave it away like it never happened? That's not how the real world works, Jimmy. In the real world, actions have consequences. In the real world, when you disrespect someone, you face the results of that disrespect." The Austrian oak took a step closer to the desk, and his physical presence seemed to fill the entire studio. "You want to know what's really dishonest? What's dishonest is pretending to be America's friendly late-night host, while you're actually just another Hollywood bully who thinks his platform gives him the right to attack anyone he wants. You want to know what's really pathetic? What's pathetic is a grown man who makes his living by mocking people who have actually accomplished something with their lives." Kimmel was now visibly shaking. Whether from anger or fear, it was impossible to tell. "Arnold, I think you're way out of line here. This is my show, and I'll conduct my interviews however I see fit. If you don't like it, you know where the door is." That was the final straw. Arnold's eyes flashed with a fury that reminded everyone in that studio why he'd been so convincing as the Terminator. "Your show? Your show? Let me tell you something about your show, Jimmy. Your show exists because people like me agree to come on it. Your show survives because guests are willing to trust you with their time and their reputation. And your show is failing because people are getting tired of watching you abuse that trust." The words hit like sledgehammers. Everyone in the studio knew that Kimmel's ratings had been struggling, but nobody had ever said it so bluntly, so publicly, so devastatingly. The host's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. Arnold continued his verbal assault with the precision of a master tactician. You sit behind this desk every night and pretend to be the voice of reason, the guy who tells it like it is. But what you really are is a coward who attacks people when they're in the vulnerable position of being your guest. You want to question my honesty? Let's question yours. How honest is it to blindside someone who came here in good faith? How honest is it to use your position of power to humiliate people for entertainment? The studio audience was completely silent now, transfixed by this verbal demolition. Several people had their phones out, recording what they knew was an unprecedented moment in television history. Kimmel's staff looked like they wanted to crawl under their desks and disappear. You know what the difference is between you and me, Jimmy? Arnold asked, his voice now carrying the weight of absolute authority. When I was governor, when people disagreed with me, I respected their right to disagree. When I make movies, I respect my audience enough to give them my best effort. When I compete in bodybuilding, I respected my opponents enough to train harder than anyone else. But you don't respect anyone. Not your guests, not your audience, not even yourself. Kimmel finally found his voice, but it came out as a croak. Arnold, I think we need to wrap this up. Commercial break. No, Arnold said firmly. We're not taking a commercial break. We're finishing this conversation. You started this, and we're going to finish it right here, right now, in front of all these people who came here expecting to see a professional interview, not a character assassination. The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. Arnold Schwarzenegger stood like a colossus before Jimmy Kimmel's desk, his presence commanding every atom of attention in the room. The host, meanwhile, looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. What happened next would be talked about for years to come. You want to know what's really sad about this whole situation, Jimmy? Arnold continued, his voice now carrying a tone of genuine disappointment rather than anger. I actually used to respect you. I thought you were funny. I thought you were clever, and I thought you understood the responsibility that comes with having a platform like this. But tonight, you've shown me that you're just another small person who got a big microphone. Kimmel's eyes darted desperately toward his producers, but they were frozen, unsure whether to cut away or let this train wreck continue to unfold. The ratings would be incredible, but the fallout could be career-ending for their host. I've been doing interviews for over 40 years, Arnold said, his voice growing stronger with each word. I've sat across from journalists who challenged me, politicians who opposed me, and critics who questioned everything I've ever done. But they did it with professionalism. They did it with respect. They did it because they wanted to inform their audience, not because they wanted to humiliate their guest for cheap laughs. The former governor turned back to the audience, addressing them directly. Ladies and gentlemen, you deserve better than this. You deserve hosts who treat their guests with dignity. You deserve entertainment that elevates rather than degrades. You deserve to spend your evening watching something that makes you feel better about the world, not worse. Kimmel finally managed to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. Arnold, please, let's just move on. Let's talk about your fitness equipment. But Arnold shook his head slowly. No, Jimmy, we're way past that now. You made a choice tonight. You chose to attack me personally instead of having a professional conversation. You chose to question my integrity instead of discussing my work. You chose to try to humiliate me instead of entertaining your audience. And now you want to pretend none of that happened? The Austrian oak walked closer to the camera, speaking directly to the millions of viewers who would eventually see this footage. I want everyone watching this to understand something. Success isn't just about what you accomplish, it's about how you treat people along the way. It's about maintaining your dignity and respecting the dignity of others. Tonight, you've seen What happens when someone forgets those basic principles? He turned back to Kimmel one final time. You know what's really ironic about all this, Jimmy? You spent the first part of this interview trying to tear down my legacy, but you've actually done something I never could have done on my own. You've reminded everyone why character matters. You've shown them the difference between someone who builds people up and someone who tears them down. You've given them a perfect example of how not to treat another human being. The studio was so quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Even the cameras seemed to be holding their breath as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Arnold straightened his jacket and looked directly into the main camera. I came here tonight to talk about helping people achieve their fitness goals. I came here to share something positive with Jimmy's audience. Instead, I've been forced to defend my life's work against unfounded attacks. But you know what? I'm proud of that life's work. I'm proud of everything I've accomplished, and I'm proud of the way I've treated people along the way. He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering his final blow. Jimmy, I hope someday you learn the difference between being funny and being cruel. I hope someday you understand that your platform is a privilege, not a weapon. And I hope someday you realize that the way you treat people says more about you than it will ever say about them. With that, Arnold Schwarzenegger turned and walked toward the exit. But Jimmy Kimmel, in a moment of desperation and poor judgment, made one final mistake. Running away, Arnold? Kimmel called out, his voice cracking with false bravado. I guess the Terminator isn't as tough as he used to be. Arnold stopped dead in his tracks. The entire studio held its breath. Slowly, deliberately, the former Mr. Olympia turned around one last time. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, and absolutely devastating. Jimmy, I'm not running away from anything. I'm walking away from someone who isn't worth my time. There's a difference. You'll figure it out someday, assuming you still have a career left to figure it out with. And with that final brutal assessment, Arnold Schwarzenegger walked off the Jimmy Kimmel live stage, leaving behind a host whose face had gone completely white, an audience that sat in stunned silence, and a moment that would be replayed millions of times across social media in the hours and days to come. The cameras kept rolling as Kimmel sat alone at his desk, staring at the empty guest chair where one of Hollywood's biggest legends had just delivered the most devastating verbal takedown in late-night television history. The host's mouth moved soundlessly, as if he was trying to find words that simply didn't exist. What you've just heard is a perfect example of what happens when someone mistakes their platform for permission to attack others. It's a reminder that respect is earned, not demanded, and that dignity is something that can never be taken away from you, only given away by you. What do you think about this incredible confrontation? Have you ever seen a celebrity interview go this wrong? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And make sure to subscribe for more unbelievable stories from the world of entertainment. The question I want you to answer is this. Do you think Jimmy Kimmel crossed the line, or was Arnold Schwarzenegger being too sensitive? Let me know in the comments.